Step out of the vehicle now. Don't make me ask twice. The officer's fist slammed against her driver's side window so hard the entire car shook. 72-year-old Dorothy Hayes flinched but kept both hands visible on the steering wheel, her heart pounding as decades of painful memories came flooding back. Officer Brendan Cole stood there with his chest puffed out, aviators reflecting the afternoon sun, one hand resting on his duty belt like he just caught a career criminal instead of a grandmother driving home from church. What he didn't know was that the suspicious old woman he'd just humiliated had trained half the police force in Atlanta, including his own captain. Dorothy Hayes woke up at 5:47 a.m. that Sunday morning. Not because of an alarm. At 72 years old, her body didn't need alarms anymore. It woke her when it was ready, which was usually before the sun. She lay in bed for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds of her Decatur neighborhood coming to life. Birds singing. A distant lawn sprinkler. Someone's car starting 3 houses down. The left side of the bed was empty. It had been empty for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Robert sighed. Dorothy still couldn't bring herself to sleep in the middle of the mattress. She stayed on her side, the right side, leaving his side untouched as if he might come back at any moment and slip under the covers like he'd done for 47 years. She reached over and touched his pillow. "Good morning, baby," she whispered. It was their anniversary. Not their wedding anniversary, that was in June. This was Robert's birthday. He would have been 75 today. Dorothy got out of bed slowly, her knees protesting slightly. Arthritis. The doctor said it was normal for her age. Dorothy didn't care if it was normal. It was annoying. She walked to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. 72 years old. Silver hair that she kept in a short, elegant cut. Warm brown skin with lines that told stories, laugh lines around her eyes, worry lines on her forehead. A face that had seen struggle and triumph, heartbreak and joy. She was proud of this face. It had earned every line. Dorothy showered, taking her time, letting the hot water ease her joints. Then she dried off and began the ritual of getting ready for church. She opened her closet and pulled out the lavender dress. Robert's favorite. "You look like royalty in that color," he used to say. "Like you should be sitting on a throne somewhere." She smiled at the memory and laid the dress on the bed. Next came the undergarments, the stockings, the modest heels, nothing too high, her balance wasn't what it used to be. Then the dress itself, zipped up carefully. Then the jewelry, simple pearl earrings and the gold cross necklace Robert had given her on their 10th anniversary. Finally, the hat. The cream-colored hat with the subtle pearls along the brim. She positioned it carefully on her head and secured it with 2 pins. Dorothy looked at herself in the full-length mirror. "Still got it," she said to her reflection. She could almost hear Robert's voice responding, "You never lost it, baby." By 7:15 a.m., Dorothy was in the kitchen making breakfast. Oatmeal with cinnamon and honey. A small glass of orange juice. Her morning medications, lisinopril for blood pressure, metformin for diabetes, a baby aspirin for her heart. She ate slowly, reading the Sunday paper. The headlines were discouraging. Another shooting in West Atlanta. Rising crime rates. A city council debate over police funding that seemed more about politics than solutions. Dorothy had spent 34 years trying to make Atlanta safer. Some days it felt like all that work had been for nothing. But then she'd remember the officers she'd trained. The policies she'd helped implement. The lives that had been saved because of investigations she'd led. It hadn't been for nothing. She just wished Robert could have seen more of the progress. At 7:45 a.m., Dorothy grabbed her purse, her Bible, and the covered dish she'd prepared the night before, peach cobbler for the church potluck. Then she walked to the garage. And there it was. Robert's car. The 1987 Buick LeSabre sat in Dorothy's garage like a museum piece. Midnight blue with chrome trim that still gleamed like it was fresh from the factory. White wall tires that Dorothy had replaced just 6 months ago. Leather interior that still smelled faintly of Robert's cologne, Old Spice, the classic kind in the white bottle. Robert had bought this car brand new in December of 1987. He'd worked double shifts at the steel plant for 2 years to save up for it. Didn't finance. Didn't lease. Paid cash. walked into the dealership with an envelope containing exactly $14,347 and drove it home that same afternoon. Dorothy had been furious. "Robert Hayes, we have 2 children in college and a mortgage. What are you doing buying a brand new car?" But Robert had just grinned that grin of his, the one that always melted her anger like butter in a hot pan. "Baby, I've been driving that raggedy Impala for 12 years. 12 years. A man's got to have something nice. Something that says he worked hard and earned it. This car is going to last us the rest of our lives." He'd been right about the quality. The Buick had 287,000 miles on it and still ran like a dream. He'd been wrong about the timeline. The car outlived him. Cancer took Robert in 2019. Pancreatic. Fast and brutal. 3 months from diagnosis to funeral. Dorothy had wanted to sell the car after he died. It hurt too much to look at it. Every time she opened the garage door and saw that midnight blue paint, she thought of him. His hands on the steering wheel. His voice singing along to the gospel station. His laugh when she complained about his driving. But she couldn't do it. Couldn't sell it. Couldn't donate it. Couldn't let it go. So she kept it. Maintained it. Drove it once a week, usually on Sundays, to keep the engine from seizing up. It was all she had left of him, besides photographs and memories. Dorothy opened the driver's side door and slid behind the wheel. The seat was positioned exactly as Robert had left it. She'd never adjusted it. She was shorter than him, so her feet barely reached the pedals, but she made it work. She started the engine. It purred. Dorothy closed her eyes and let herself pretend, just for a moment, that Robert was sitting beside her in the passenger seat. "You ready, baby?" she whispered. Then she opened her eyes, put the car in reverse, and backed out of the garage. But she had no idea what this drive would cost her. Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church sat on a tree-lined street in College Park, about 20 minutes from Dorothy's house. It was a beautiful building, red brick with white columns and a tall steeple that could be seen from blocks away. The congregation had built it in 1978, and Dorothy and Robert had been there from the beginning. They'd gotten married in a smaller church, but this, Greater Mount Zion, this was where they'd built their life. Where their children had been baptized. Where they'd celebrated anniversaries and mourned losses. Where Robert's funeral had been held 3 years ago. Dorothy pulled into the parking lot at 7:52 a.m. Early, as always. She liked to arrive before the crowd, while the sanctuary was still quiet. She'd sit in her pew, 3rd row, left side, the same pew she and Robert had claimed 31 years ago, and she'd pray. Not formal prayers. Just conversations with God. About Robert. About her children. About the state of the world and her place in it. This morning, she prayed for strength. Because anniversaries were hard. Birthdays were harder. "Lord, I miss him," she whispered, sitting alone in the empty sanctuary. "I know he's with you. I know he's at peace. But I miss him so much some days I can barely breathe. Help me get through today. Help me remember the joy instead of just the pain." By 8 a.m., other members started arriving. Sister Gloria, 81 years old, who'd been attending Greater Mount Zion since it was founded. Brother Eugene, the deacon who always arrived exactly 15 minutes early. The Thompson family with their 5 children, ranging in age from 3 to 17. And then the choir. Dorothy heard them warming up in the back, scales and harmonies, voices blending in a way that could only be described as holy. The service started at 8:30 a.m. Pastor Terrence Williams took the pulpit. He was 63 years old, had been leading Greater Mount Zion for 22 years, and preached with a fire that could wake the dead. His sermon that morning was titled, "Forgiveness in the Face of Injustice." He talked about turning the other cheek. About loving your enemies. About trusting that God saw what man ignored. Dorothy said amen 17 times. She didn't know it yet, but she was going to need every word of that sermon before the day was over. The service ended at 10:15 a.m. Then came the fellowship hour. The women's auxiliary had organized a potluck in the fellowship hall. Long tables covered with dishes, fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, sweet potato pie, and Dorothy's peach cobbler. She set her dish on the dessert table and stepped back to admire the spread. Dorothy Hayes, Is that your famous cobbler? She turned to see Sister Evelyn Morris, 70 years old, one of her closest friends at the church. You know it is. Girl, you trying to make the rest of us look bad. Dorothy laughed. It's my grandmother's recipe. I can't take all the credit. Well, your grandmother knew what she was doing. They filled their plates and sat together at one of the tables. Around them, the fellowship hall buzzed with conversation. Children ran between tables. The choir director was trying to recruit new members. The deacons were discussing next month's fundraiser. It felt like family. Because it was family. This was Dorothy's community. These were her people. And for a few hours, sitting in that fellowship hall, eating cobbler and laughing with Sister Evelyn, Dorothy felt at peace. If only she'd known what was waiting for her on I-85. Dorothy left the church at 2:03 p.m. She'd helped clean up after the potluck, washed dishes in the industrial kitchen, and spent 20 minutes talking to Pastor Williams about the upcoming revival. She was tired now. Good tired. The kind of tired that came from a morning well spent. She walked to the Buick, her heels clicking on the pavement. The sun was warm. The sky was cloudless. It was a perfect Georgia afternoon. She got in the car, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home was simple. Take College Park Road to the highway entrance. Merge onto I-85 North. Stay in the right lane. Exit at Candler Road. 5 more minutes to her house. She'd made this drive 1,000 times. There was no reason to think today would be any different. Dorothy merged onto I-85 at 2:11 p.m. Traffic was light. Sunday afternoon drivers, most of them coming home from church or heading out for family visits. Dorothy settled into the right lane and set her speed at 63 miles per hour. The speed limit was 65, but Dorothy always drove a little under. Safer that way. The gospel station played softly on the radio. The Clark Sisters. Asterisk, you brought the sunshine. Asterisk. Dorothy hummed along. She thought about stopping at the grocery store on the way home. She needed milk. Maybe some fresh vegetables for the week. Chicken breasts if they were on sale. But then she decided against it. She was tired. She'd go home. Make a cup of tea. Sit on the porch. Look through the photo albums. Talk to Robert. She smiled at the thought. And that's when she saw the lights. Blue and red, flashing in her rearview mirror. Dorothy's heart sank. Her eyes immediately went to her speedometer. 63. She wasn't speeding. She checked her rearview mirror. The patrol car was right behind her now, lights blazing. There was no question. He was pulling her over. Dorothy's hands began to tremble slightly, but she forced herself to stay calm. Signal right. Slow down gradually. Pull onto the shoulder. She'd done this before, not as a driver, but as an officer. She knew the protocol. She knew what she was supposed to do. What she didn't know was why. Dorothy put the car in park near mile marker 47. Turned off the engine. Placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, where they would be clearly visible. And she waited. The patrol car stopped about 15 feet behind her. Through her side mirror, Dorothy could see the officer sitting in his vehicle, speaking into his radio. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. Dorothy didn't move. Didn't reach for her purse. Didn't adjust her mirror. She just sat there, hands on the wheel, heart pounding, waiting for whatever was about to happen. And here's where everything began to unravel. Brendan Cole was 28 years old. He'd been with the Atlanta Police Department for 2 years and 7 months. Before that, he'd worked for a small department in Millbrook County, a rural area about 90 miles south of Atlanta. He'd lasted 18 months there before resigning, a polite way of saying he'd been forced out before they could fire him. There had been complaints. Lots of them. Excessive force during a traffic stop. Racial profiling. Using his badge to intimidate people who questioned him. But the department had wanted to avoid the paperwork and the potential lawsuit, so they'd offered him a deal, resign quietly, and they'd seal his personnel file. Cole took the deal. And 6 months later, he was hired by Atlanta PD. His background check came back clean because the Millbrook complaints were sealed. Nobody asked the right questions. Nobody dug deeper. And now, Brendan Cole was a police officer with a badge, a gun, and a dangerously inflated sense of his own authority. He'd been patrolling I-85 that afternoon, looking for quota fills. The department didn't officially have quotas, but everyone knew the unofficial expectation: write tickets, make stops, show activity. Cole needed activity. He'd been watching cars for the past hour, looking for anything he could justify as suspicious. And then he saw it. An older model Buick. Dark blue. Driven by an elderly black woman. To most people, that would have been unremarkable. To Brendan Cole, it was suspicious. He didn't have a specific reason. No reported crime. No bolo, be on the lookout, for that type of vehicle. He just had a feeling. And in his mind, that was enough. Cole accelerated and moved in behind the Buick. He watched it for about 2 miles. The driver stayed in the right lane. Maintained consistent speed. Signaled properly when a car merged near her. Perfect driving. But Cole had already made up his mind. He hit his lights. Dorothy watched in her side mirror as the officer finally got out of his patrol car. He was young. White. Buzz cut. Sunglasses that hid his eyes. He walked toward her car with one hand resting on his duty belt, the other holding a flashlight even though it was the middle of the afternoon. Dorothy took a slow breath. Stay calm. Be polite. Don't give him a reason. Officer Cole stopped at her window and stood there for a moment, looking down at her. Dorothy rolled the window down halfway. Good afternoon, officer, she said, keeping her voice calm and respectful. Can you tell me why you pulled me over? Cole didn't answer her question. Instead, he leaned down and peered into her car, his eyes scanning the interior like he was searching for weapons or drugs. Dorothy felt a flash of irritation but pushed it down. License and registration, Cole said flatly. Of course. May I ask what the problem is? License. And registration. Now. Dorothy nodded slowly. I'm going to reach into my glove compartment to get my registration. My license is in my purse on the passenger seat. I'm telling you this so you know what I'm doing. Is that acceptable? Cole's hand moved slightly closer to his belt. Do it slowly. Dorothy moved with exaggerated care. She opened the glove compartment with 2 fingers, pulled out the registration folder, then reached across to her purse and extracted her wallet. She handed both documents through the window. Cole snatched them from her hand without a word of thanks. He studied her license for a long moment, his lips moving slightly as he read the information. Dorothy Hayes, he said, his tone completely flat. This your current address? Yes, sir. 847 Oakwood Drive in Decatur. And this vehicle? Says here it's registered to Robert Hayes. My late husband. He passed away 3 years ago. The car is still in his name, but I'm in the process of transferring the title. Aha. Cole didn't sound convinced. He walked around to the back of the car and examined her license plate. Then he walked around to the front and looked at that plate too. Dorothy watched him in her side mirror, her confusion growing. What was he looking for? Cole returned to her window. You aware that your vehicle matches the description of a car reported as suspicious in this area? Dorothy blinked. Suspicious? In what way? That's not your concern. Officer, with all due respect, if I'm being stopped because my car matches some description, I think I have a right to know what that description is. Cole's jaw tightened. I don't think you understand how this works. I ask the questions. You answer them. That's the procedure. Dorothy felt her blood pressure rising, but she kept her voice level. I understand procedure perfectly well, officer. I also understand that citizens have rights. I'm asking you, politely, what specific description my vehicle matched. Older model sedan. Dark color. Driving erratically. I haven't been driving erratically. I've been in the right lane going 63 miles per hour since I entered this highway. I signaled properly. I maintained consistent speed. I haven't violated any traffic laws. Cole leaned down, his face now just inches from hers. You seem to know a lot about traffic laws. I'm an educated woman. Yeah? Where'd you learn all this? YouTube. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. Dorothy took a slow breath, fighting to keep her composure. Officer Cole, she read his name tag carefully. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a 72-year-old woman driving home from church. I have a covered dish in my back seat from the potluck. My registration is current. My license is valid. So I'm asking you again, why am I being detained? Cole straightened up, and his expression hardened. Step out of the vehicle. Dorothy's stomach dropped. Excuse me? You heard me. Step out of the vehicle. Now. On what legal grounds? I don't need to explain grounds to you. I gave you a lawful order. Are you refusing to comply? Dorothy's mind raced. She knew what could happen if she refused. She'd seen the videos. Read the news stories. Heard the names. Sandra Bland. Philando Castile. Breonna Taylor. She thought about her son, Daniel. About her grandchildren. About the life she still wanted to live. And she made a choice. She would comply. But she would remember every detail. I'm opening my door, Dorothy said clearly. I'm stepping out slowly. My hands will remain visible. She pushed the door open and stood up, her legs slightly unsteady from sitting so long. She was still wearing her lavender church dress. Her cream hat with the pearls. Her modest heels. And now she was standing on the side of Interstate 85, in front of passing traffic, like a common criminal. But this humiliation was only the beginning. Hands on the vehicle, Cole ordered. Dorothy hesitated for just a moment. Officer, is that really necessary? I'm a 72-year-old woman. I'm not armed. I'm not dangerous. Hands. On. The. Vehicle. His voice had that edge now. The edge that said he was looking for a reason to escalate. Dorothy placed her palms on the warm metal of the Buick's roof. Cars slowed as they passed. She could feel the eyes on her. The stares. The whispers probably happening inside those vehicles. Asterisk, look at that. Police got that old lady out of her car. Wonder what she did. Asterisk. The shame burned hotter than the Georgia sun. Cole moved behind her. And then she felt his hands. Patting down her sides. Her back. Her hips. Dorothy closed her eyes, tears threatening to form. 72 years old. Grandmother of 4. Respected member of her church. Former deputy police commissioner of the city of Atlanta. And she was being frisked on the side of a highway while strangers watched. You carrying anything I should know about? Cole asked. Weapons? Drugs? Anything illegal? No. People lie to me all the time. All day long. So you'll forgive me if I don't just take your word for it. I'm not lying to you. We'll see. He finished the pat-down and stepped back. Stay right there. Don't move. Don't reach for anything. Don't get back in your car. Just stand there. Cole walked back to his patrol car, leaving Dorothy standing on the shoulder with her hands still on the vehicle. She could feel her legs beginning to ache. Her knees weren't good. Standing in one position for too long made the arthritis worse. But she didn't dare move. 1 minute passed. Then 3. Then 5. The sun beat down on her. Her hat was slightly askew now, knocked loose during the pat-down. Her dress had dust on it from the roadside gravel. She looked down at her hands, still pressed against Robert's car. These hands had held her children when they were born. Had held Robert's hand through 47 years of marriage. Had held a badge and sworn an oath to protect and serve. And now they were being forced against a car while a young officer with a power complex decided what to do with her. Dorothy felt something break inside her. Not her spirit. Her patience. And that's when she decided she wasn't going to stay silent anymore. What Dorothy didn't know was that Officer Cole wasn't alone. Sitting in the passenger seat of the patrol car was Officer Louis Vargas. Vargas was 47 years old. He'd been with Atlanta PD for 19 years. He'd worked everything from patrol to narcotics to community outreach. He was a good cop. Not perfect, no cop was, but good. Fair. Professional. The kind of officer who actually believed in protecting and serving. And right now, watching his partner harass an elderly woman on the side of the highway, Vargas was deeply uncomfortable. Brendan, he said quietly. What are you doing? Cole was running Dorothy's information through the system. My job. She's a 72-year-old woman in a church dress. She wasn't speeding. Wasn't swerving. What's the probable cause here? Vehicle matched a description. What description? I didn't hear anything come over the radio. Cole didn't answer. Vargas leaned forward. Brendan. There was no description, was there? I saw what I saw. You saw an old black lady in an old car. That's not a crime. Cole's jaw tightened. You questioning me? I'm asking you what the hell we're doing here. We're doing our job. If you got a problem with that, maybe you should go back to traffic school. Vargas bit back his response. He'd worked with Cole for 6 months now. Long enough to see the pattern. Long enough to know that Cole had a problem with authority, specifically, anyone who questioned his. Vargas had filed 2 informal complaints with their sergeant. Nothing official. Just conversations. Concerns. He'd been told to give the kid time to adjust. Well, time was up. Her record's clean, Vargas said, looking at the computer screen. No warrants. No priors. Not even a parking ticket in the last 10 years. So let her go. I'm going to search the vehicle first. Vargas's eyes widened. On what grounds? Reasonable suspicion. Of what? I'll know it when I see it. Brendan, that's not how this works. You can't just search someone's car because you have a hunch. Cole turned to face his partner, his eyes hard behind those mirrored sunglasses. You want to write the report? Or you want me to? It was a threat. Thinly veiled, but a threat nonetheless. Vargas had a family. A mortgage. 17 years until retirement. He thought about Sandra. His wife. The way she'd looked at him last week when he came home frustrated after another shift with Cole. Lewis, if something feels wrong, you have to say something. You can't just go along to get along. She was right. But saying something had consequences. Vargas looked out the window at Dorothy Hayes, still standing with her hands on her car, dignity radiating from every inch of her 72-year-old frame. And he made a choice. I'm not signing off on an illegal search, Vargas said. Cole glared at him. Then stay in the car. He got out and walked back to Dorothy. Vargas sat there, hating himself, but he pulled out his phone. And he started recording. If only he'd spoken up sooner. Cole returned to Dorothy with his chest puffed out, clearly annoyed. I'm going to search your vehicle. Dorothy's head snapped up. On what grounds? I have reasonable suspicion that this vehicle may contain contraband. Based on what evidence? I don't have to explain my reasoning to you. Actually, officer, under the 4th Amendment, you do. You can't search my vehicle without probable cause or my consent. And I do not consent. Cole's face reddened. You a lawyer now? I'm a citizen who knows her rights. Yeah? Well, I'm a cop who knows the law. And the law says if I have reasonable suspicion, I can search your vehicle. So step back. Dorothy didn't move. I want your badge number. And your supervisor's name. You threatening me? I'm exercising my rights. Lady, you got about 3 seconds to step back before I add obstruction to your list of problems. Dorothy stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped back. Not because she was afraid. But because she was smart. She'd fought enough battles in her life to know which ones to fight in the moment and which ones to document for later. This one she would document. Cole opened the back door of the Buick and started going through her belongings. Her purse. He dumped it out on the seat. Wallet, tissues, reading glasses, a small bottle of hand sanitizer, her medication case. He opened the medication case and examined each pill bottle like he was a pharmacist. What's this? Lisinopril. For blood pressure. And this? Metformin. For diabetes. Aha. He shook the bottles, held them up to the light, then tossed them back into her purse. Next, he picked up her Bible. Dorothy's heart clenched as he flipped through it, shaking it upside down like contraband might fall out. That Bible had been a gift from Robert on their 25th anniversary. Her name was embossed in gold on the cover. The pages were worn from years of reading, with notes in the margins and highlighted passages. Cole tossed it back onto the seat. Then he found the covered dish. "What's this?" "Peach cobbler. From the church potluck." He removed the lid and actually sniffed it. Dorothy wanted to scream. That was food. Food she'd made with her own hands. Food she'd planned to eat on her porch while thinking about Robert. And this man was treating it like it might be a brick of cocaine. Cole set the dish aside and kept searching. He opened the glove compartment. Rifled through the center console. Looked under the seats. Checked the trunk. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because Dorothy Hayes was exactly who she said she was, a 72-year-old grandmother driving home from church. When Cole finished, he slammed the trunk shut and walked back to her. "Well?" Dorothy said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Cole's face was red. He didn't like being made to look foolish. "I'm issuing you a citation." "For what?" "Failure to signal when changing lanes." Dorothy stared at him. "I didn't change lanes. That's what I observed." "That's a lie, and you know it." Cole stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You want to be real careful about calling a police officer a liar? And you want to be real careful about violating a citizen's constitutional rights, officer that asterisk. You got an attitude problem." "No. I have a dignity problem. As in, you've violated mine for the last 20 minutes and I'm not going to stand here and let it continue." Cole pulled out his citation book. "Sign here." "I'm not signing anything." "Then you're under arrest for refusal to comply." And that's when Dorothy pulled out her phone. But what happened next changed everything. Put the phone down," Cole barked. "I'm calling my attorney. That's my constitutional right." "I said put it down." "I'm making a phone call, officer. Unless you want to add illegal seizure of property to your list of violations today, I suggest you let me." Cole looked like he wanted to snatch the phone from her hand. But something in Dorothy's voice, the absolute authority in it, made him pause. Vargas had gotten out of the patrol car now and was walking over. "Brendan," he said quietly. "Let her make the call. She's being non-compliant." "She's making a phone call." "That's not non-compliance. That's her right." Cole's hands clenched into fists, but he stepped back. Dorothy dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a deep voice answered. "Hey, Mom. What's up?" Just hearing Daniel's voice made Dorothy's throat tighten with emotion, but she kept her composure. "Daniel. I need you." The lightness in his voice vanished instantly. "What's wrong?" "I've been pulled over on I-85 near mile marker 47. The officer has detained me, searched my vehicle without probable cause, and is now threatening to arrest me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Daniel's voice came back, cold and hard. "For what?" "He claims I failed to signal when changing lanes." "I didn't. I've been in the right lane the entire time. He pulled me out of the car, patted me down on the side of the highway, went through my belongings, and is now trying to coerce me into signing a false citation." "What's the officer's name?" Dorothy looked at Cole's name tag. "Cole. Officer Brendan Cole. Atlanta PD. His partner is Officer Vargas. Put him on the phone." "Daniel." "Mom. Put him on the phone. Now." Dorothy held out her cell. "Officer Cole. My son would like to speak with you." Cole hesitated. "I don't take calls from family members during traffic stops." "He's not just a family member." "I don't care who he. He's a Georgia State Trooper. Zone 5 Command. 22 years of service. And unless you want to explain to your captain why you refused a direct request from a senior state officer, you'll take this call." Vargas's eyes widened. Cole's confidence flickered. Slowly, reluctantly, he took the phone. "This is Officer Cole." "Officer Cole." The voice on the other end was quiet. Controlled. The kind of control that came right before an explosion. "This is State Trooper Daniel Hayes, badge number 4471, Zone 5 Command, Georgia State Patrol. The woman you have detained is my mother. Cole's throat went dry. I'm not finished. Cole closed his mouth. You're going to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say, Daniel continued. Because your career depends on it. Are you listening? Yes, sir. My mother is 72 years old. She has no criminal record. No outstanding warrants. Not even a speeding ticket in the last 15 years. She was driving home from church in a vehicle that has been in our family for 36 years. And according to what she just told me, you've pulled her over without legitimate probable cause, subjected her to an illegal search, and are now attempting to coerce her into signing a citation for a violation she did not commit. Does that sound accurate? Cole stammered. There was a report of suspicious vehicle. What report? When was it called in? What was the specific description? What was the complaint number? Silence. That's what I thought, Daniel said. There is no report. You don't have probable cause. You have a hunch. And in the state of Georgia, officer, a hunch doesn't justify a traffic stop. It doesn't justify a search. And it sure as hell doesn't justify treating a 72-year-old woman like a criminal. Cole's hand was shaking now. Now here's what's going to happen, Daniel continued, his voice like ice. You're going to tear up that citation. You're going to return my mother's documents. You're going to apologize for the inconvenience. And then you're going to let her drive away without another word. Do you understand? Cole opened his mouth, but before he could respond, another voice cut through the phone. Who is this? Daniel's tone shifted slightly, still firm, but with a layer of professional courtesy. This is State Trooper Daniel Hayes. Who am I speaking with? This is Sergeant Ronald Patterson, Atlanta PD. I'm Officer Cole's supervisor. I just arrived on scene. Dorothy looked up and saw a third patrol car pulling onto the shoulder behind the others. Sergeant Patterson, Daniel said. I appreciate you being there. I was just explaining to Officer Cole that my mother appears to have been detained without proper legal justification. Patterson got out of his vehicle. He was 58 years old, black, with the weathered face of someone who'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by much. He walked over to where Dorothy was standing and looked at her, really looked at her. Church dress. Pearl hat. 72 years old with steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. Then he looked at Cole. What's going on here, Cole? Cole tried to explain. Sarge, I pulled her over because the vehicle matched a description. Suspicious activity. I was just doing my job. What description? Patterson's voice was flat. Older model sedan, dark color, driving erratically. Patterson turned to Vargas. Vargas, you see this vehicle driving erratically? Vargas hesitated for just a moment. Then he said, No, Sarge. She was doing 63 in a 65 zone. Perfect lane discipline. No erratic behavior. Cole shot Vargas a look of pure betrayal. Patterson turned back to Dorothy. I apologize for the inconvenience. Can I see your license and registration? Dorothy handed them over, her hands steady now. Patterson looked at the license. Then he looked at it again. And his entire expression changed. Dorothy Hayes, he said slowly. 847 Oakwood Drive, Decatur. Yes. Patterson was quiet for what felt like an eternity. Then he looked up at Dorothy, and recognition dawned in his eyes. Commissioner Hayes? Dorothy nodded. Cole, Patterson said, his voice dangerously quiet. Do you have any idea who this woman is? Cole frowned. She's just... This is Dorothy Hayes. Commissioner Dorothy Hayes. Retired Deputy Police Commissioner, Atlanta Police Department. 34 years of service. She wrote the community policing manual that every officer in this department studies at the academy. She implemented the use of force training protocols we still use today. She was my training officer when I was a rookie in 1994. The color drained from Cole's face. Patterson turned to Dorothy, and his voice softened. Commissioner, I am so sorry. Dorothy nodded slowly. It's not your fault, Ronald. You weren't here. But my officers were. And they will answer for this. He turned back to Cole, and the softness vanished. You. Car. Now. Sarge, I can explain. Now. Cole walked back to his patrol car like a man heading to his own execution. Patterson pulled out his phone and made a call. Captain Broussard? This is Sergeant Patterson. I'm on scene at a traffic stop on I-85 that's about to become a very big problem. You need to get down here. Immediately. He hung up and turned back to Dorothy. Commissioner, I know this doesn't make up for what just happened, but I want you to know, this isn't who we are. This isn't what we stand for. Dorothy looked at him with tired eyes. Ronald, I know you mean that. But here's what I need you to understand. I had options today. I have a name. I have connections. My son is a state trooper. But what about the thousands of black women who don't have those things? What happens when Officer Cole pulls them over? Who do they call? Who believes them? Patterson had no answer. Because there was no good answer. Be honest, what would you have done in her position? Captain Sharon Broussard arrived 26 minutes later. She was 53 years old, tall and commanding, with close-cropped gray hair and a presence that demanded respect. She'd been with Atlanta PD for 28 years, rising through the ranks with a combination of intelligence, integrity, and zero tolerance for misconduct. She was also a black woman. And she was also one of Dorothy Hayes' protégés. Back in 1999, when Sharon was a young detective struggling to be taken seriously in a male-dominated, predominantly white department, it was Dorothy who'd mentored her. Dorothy who'd advocated for her promotions. Dorothy who'd taught her how to navigate a system that wasn't designed for people who looked like them. Sharon owed her career to Dorothy Hayes. And now, seeing her former mentor standing on the side of a highway in her Sunday best, having been patted down and humiliated by one of her own officers, Sharon was furious. She parked her vehicle and got out, walking directly to Dorothy. Commissioner Hayes. Captain Broussard. They embraced briefly, two women who understood each other in ways that needed no words. Then Sharon turned to Cole, who was standing next to Patterson's vehicle looking like he wanted to disappear into the asphalt. Officer Cole, Sharon said, her voice cold enough to freeze water. You and I will be having a conversation in my office. Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. Do not be late. Captain, I can explain. I said 8 a.m. Yes. Sharon turned to Vargas. Officer Vargas. You're on administrative leave pending investigation. Vargas nodded. He'd expected that. He should have intervened sooner. He knew it. Sharon took a deep breath and addressed Dorothy directly. Commissioner, I cannot apologize enough for what happened here today. This is a failure at every level. And I promise you, I personally promise you, there will be accountability. Dorothy looked at her former protégé with eyes that had seen too much. Sharon, I know you mean that. I do. But I need you to understand something. This isn't about me. I survived today because I knew the system. I knew my rights. I had resources. But what about everyone else? What about the women who look like me but don't have a badge to flash or a son in law enforcement? What happens to them when they encounter Officer Cole? Sharon was quiet. I didn't spend 34 years building this department so that officers like him could tear down everything we worked for, Dorothy continued. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm filing a formal complaint. I'm requesting all bodycam footage from this stop. And if what I see confirms what I experienced, I'm going public. I'm going to every news station, every civil rights organization, every platform I can find. And I'm going to make sure the whole city knows exactly what happened here today. Sharon nodded. That's your right, Commissioner. And I won't stand in your way. You're damn right it is. Daniel arrived 15 minutes later, having broken several speed limits to get there. He jumped out of his patrol car and wrapped his mother in a tight hug. You okay, Mom? I'm fine, baby. But her voice cracked just a little. Because she wasn't fine. Not really. She was exhausted. Humiliated. Heartbroken. She'd given her whole life to making law enforcement better. To proving that policing could be honorable. To building bridges between police and the communities they served. And in one afternoon, one arrogant officer with a badge and an attitude had torn it all down. And just when she thought the worst was over, something unexpected happened. What none of the officers realized was that the entire incident had been witnessed and recorded by multiple people. 3 cars had pulled over on the shoulder about 100 yards back, close enough to see but far enough to stay safe. The first was a black Nissan Altima driven by Renee Thompson, a 48-year-old social worker from East Point. She'd been on her way home from visiting her mother in the hospital when she saw the traffic stop. Something about it didn't feel right, an elderly black woman being pulled from her car, searched, detained. So Renee had pulled over. And she'd started recording. Not just recording, streaming. Live on Facebook. "You're seeing this," she whispered into her phone camera. "They got this elderly sister out the car on I-85 like she a drug dealer. She came from church. You can literally see her church hat. This is wrong. This is so wrong." The comments flooded in immediately. "What highway is this? Somebody call the news. That's somebody's grandmother. I'm sharing this everywhere." The second car was a silver Honda Accord driven by James Mitchell, a 52-year-old electrician who'd seen enough questionable traffic stops in his lifetime to know when something wasn't right. He was recording too. Phone propped on his dashboard, capturing everything. The third car was a white Mercedes-Benz driven by Angela Washington, a 44-year-old attorney who specialized in civil rights cases. She wasn't just recording. She was taking notes. Time stamps. Badge numbers. Vehicle numbers. She'd already texted her law partner, *got something big. I-85. Police misconduct. Elderly black woman. Will send details. *. By the time Captain Broussard arrived on scene, Renee's Facebook Live had over 18,000 viewers. And the number was climbing. Renee ended her live stream after 43 minutes with a promise. "Y'all, I got all of it. Every second. The pat-down. The search. The way they treated this woman. I'm downloading this right now and sending it to every news station in Atlanta. Channel 2, Channel 5, all of them. And I'm sending it to the NAACP, the ACLU, every civil rights organization I can find. They tried to humiliate this sister in front of the whole highway. Now the whole world is gonna see it." She wasn't exaggerating. Within 2 hours, the video had been shared over 40,000 times. Within 4 hours, it had been picked up by local news stations. Within 6 hours, it was trending on Twitter. Within 8 hours, it was national news. CNN, MSNBC, CBS. They all ran segments. Former police commissioner detained in traffic stop. Elderly black woman searched without cause on Georgia highway. Viral video shows disturbing traffic stop of retired officer. The public reaction was overwhelming. Outrage. Shock. Demands for accountability. The Atlanta Police Department's phone lines were flooded with calls. The mayor's office issued a statement promising a full and thorough investigation. Civil rights leaders called for immediate action. And Dorothy Hayes, who'd gone to church that morning just wanting to remember her late husband on his birthday, woke up the next day to find herself at the center of a national conversation about police misconduct, racial profiling, and the treatment of black Americans. But here's the part that changed everything. 1 week after the incident, Dorothy received a phone call from Michelle Torres, an investigative journalist with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. "Commissioner Hayes, I've been following your story. And I think there's more to it than just one bad officer. Can we meet?" They met at a quiet diner in College Park, the kind of place where people minded their own business and the coffee was always fresh. Michelle was in her early 30s, sharp-eyed, with a reporter's notebook full of handwritten notes. "Commissioner," she began, "I've been digging into Officer Cole's background. And what I found is disturbing." "Tell me." Before Atlanta, Cole worked for Millbrook County Police Department. Small rural force about 90 miles south of here. He was there for 18 months. And he resigned under pressure. There were multiple complaints against him. Excessive force. Racial profiling. Intimidation tactics. The department was about to fire him, but they offered him the option to resign instead. Sealed his personnel file as part of the agreement. Dorothy's jaw tightened. So Atlanta hired him with no knowledge of his history. Exactly. His background check came back clean because everything was sealed. No red flags. No warnings. Just a clean slate. That's a systemic failure. It gets worse, Michelle continued. Cole isn't the only one. I've identified at least 6 other officers currently serving in Georgia who've used the same loophole. They got in trouble at one department, resigned before they could be fired, had their records sealed, and then got hired somewhere else. It's a pipeline of problem officers moving from department to department. Dorothy sat back in her seat, processing this information. How many victims? That's what I'm trying to find out. I've tracked down some people who were pulled over, searched, harassed by these officers. But most of them don't want to come forward. They are scared. They don't think anyone will believe them. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she made a decision. Michelle, I want you to write this story. Not just about Cole. About the whole system. Every department that's covered up misconduct. Every officer who's been allowed to resign and move on. Every victim who's been silenced. Michelle's eyes lit up. That's a big story, Commissioner. It'll take time. Resources. And it won't make me popular with law enforcement. I don't care about popular, Dorothy said firmly. I care about right. And this needs to be exposed. I'll help you. I'll use my contacts. I'll get you access to people who can verify what you're reporting. And when it's done, we're going to make sure every lawmaker in this state sees it. Michelle smiled. Commissioner Hayes, this is why I became a journalist. And this is why I became a cop. Over the next 8 weeks, Dorothy and Michelle worked together on the most comprehensive investigation into police misconduct in Georgia's history. They filed Freedom of Information requests for personnel records, disciplinary files, and resignation agreements. They tracked down former officers willing to talk, some still bitter about being forced out, others relieved to finally tell the truth. They interviewed victims. Dozens of them. Black motorists who'd been pulled over for driving suspiciously. Searched without cause. Threatened. Humiliated. And they connected the dots. It wasn't just about individual bad officers. It was about a system designed to protect them. Internal affairs units that buried complaints. Police unions that shielded misconduct. District attorneys who refused to prosecute. City councils that settled lawsuits quietly to avoid bad publicity. Everyone knew. Everyone was complicit. And black communities bore the brunt of it. Dorothy spent long nights reviewing bodycam footage, reading complaint files, cross-referencing names and dates. Daniel helped when he could, using his law enforcement connections to verify information and open doors that might otherwise stay closed. It was exhausting work. But Dorothy Hayes hadn't become deputy police commissioner by shying away from hard work. Finally, after 2 months of investigation, Michelle's story was ready. It was a 4-part series titled, Badge of Shame, How Georgia Police Departments Protect Problem Officers. Part 1, The Resignation Loophole, How Officers Accused of Misconduct Are Allowed to Resign, Sealing Their Records and Leaving Them Free to be Hired Elsewhere. Part 2, The Pipeline, Profiles of Specific Officers, including Brendan Cole, who'd used this loophole to continue their careers despite documented misconduct. Part 3, The Victims. Stories from dozens of black motorists who'd been stopped, searched, and harassed by these officers, often without any legal justification. Part 4, The Solution. Proposed reforms including a statewide database of officer misconduct, mandatory disclosure requirements, and independent oversight of internal affairs investigations. The series ran on a Sunday morning in November. By Sunday evening, it had been shared over 100,000 times. By Monday morning, the governor's office was fielding calls from reporters and demanding answers from police chiefs across the state. By Tuesday, 3 state legislators announced they were introducing reform bills based on Michelle's findings. And by Wednesday morning, Officer Brendan Cole was arrested. The Attorney General's office had been quietly building a case against Cole for months. Michelle's article accelerated the timeline. Cole was charged with civil rights violations, falsifying official documents, corruption, extortion, intimidation under color of law. The evidence was overwhelming. Bodycam footage showing his pattern of targeting black motorists. Financial records showing payments from a local towing company that he'd been steering business to by seizing vehicles under questionable circumstances. Testimony from other officers who'd witnessed his behavior and said nothing, until now. His bail was set at $500,000. He couldn't make it. Brendan Cole, the man who'd spent 2 years wielding a badge like a weapon, sat in the same county jail where he'd sent countless people on questionable charges. Dorothy watched the news coverage from her living room, Daniel sitting beside her. "How do you feel, Mom?" She thought about it for a long time. "I feel like this is a start," she said finally. "Not an ending. A start." "What do you mean?" Cole is one man. One bad officer. But he didn't operate in a vacuum. He was protected. Enabled. Passed along like a problem nobody wanted to deal with. Until we fix the system that allowed that to happen, there will be more Brendan Coles. More traffic stops. More humiliations. More deaths. Daniel nodded. "So what's next?" Dorothy smiled grimly. "Next, I testify." In January, the Georgia State Legislature held hearings on the proposed Police Accountability Act. The bill would create a statewide database of officer misconduct, require departments to check it before hiring, and establish independent oversight of internal affairs investigations. Law enforcement unions opposed it. Some police chiefs opposed it. But the public, especially black communities across Georgia, supported it overwhelmingly. Dorothy was invited to testify before the Joint Committee. She sat at the witness table in a packed hearing room, cameras from every major outlet pointed at her. She wore her finest suit, navy blue, tailored, the same one she'd worn to her retirement ceremony. She looked out at the legislators, some supportive, some skeptical, some openly hostile. And she began. "My name is Dorothy Hayes. I served the city of Atlanta as a police officer for 34 years. I walked beats in the most dangerous neighborhoods. I earned my sergeant stripes, my lieutenant bars, my captain's insignia. In 2009, I was appointed Deputy Police Commissioner, the first black woman to hold that position in Atlanta's history." The room was silent. I tell you this not to boast, but to establish credibility. Because what I'm about to say might be hard for some of you to hear. 3 months ago, I was pulled over on Interstate 85 by Officer Brendan Cole. I was 72 years old. I was driving home from church. I had committed no violation. But Officer Cole decided I was suspicious. He pulled me from my car, patted me down in front of passing traffic, searched my vehicle without cause, and threatened to arrest me when I asserted my rights. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I survived that encounter because I knew the system. I knew my rights. My son is a state trooper. I had resources. But most people don't. Most people, especially black people, encounter officers like Brendan Cole and have no recourse. They comply because they're afraid. They stay silent because they think no one will believe them. They accept the humiliation because they've been taught that's just how it is. Dorothy's voice grew stronger. This bill isn't about punishing good officers. It's about protecting communities from bad ones. It's about making sure that officers who abuse their authority can't just move to another department and keep abusing it. It's about transparency, accountability, and basic human dignity. She looked directly at the legislators who'd expressed opposition. Some of you will vote against this bill because police unions tell you to. Some of you will vote against it because you think it's anti-police. But I'm asking you, as someone who wore a badge for 34 years, to think about who you're really protecting. Are you protecting communities? Or are you protecting a broken system? She paused. Because I can tell you from experience, good officers have nothing to fear from accountability. Only bad officers do. The room erupted in applause. Even some of the skeptical legislators were nodding. Would you have spoken as boldly? The debate over the Police Accountability Act lasted 3 weeks. Supporters argued it was necessary reform. Opponents argued it would hamper law enforcement and make it harder to recruit officers. Dorothy attended every hearing. Sat in the gallery. Made her presence known. She didn't speak unless spoken to, but her mere presence, this 72-year-old black woman who'd given her life to law enforcement and been repaid with humiliation, was a powerful statement. The House voted first. The bill passed 98 to 82. Bipartisan support, though the margins were closer than advocates had hoped. Then it moved to the Senate. The Senate debate was more contentious. Amendments were proposed. Some strengthened the bill. Others weakened it. Dorothy watched from the gallery, her hands folded, praying silently. Finally, in late March, the Senate voted. The chamber was packed. Reporters, advocates, police representatives, ordinary citizens who'd driven hours to witness this moment. The vote was called. One by one, senators voted. Yes. No. Yes. Yes. No. Dorothy's heart pounded. The final tally, 34 to 22. The Police Accountability Act had passed. The gallery erupted in applause and cheers. Dorothy closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Jesus." 2 weeks later, the governor signed it into law on the steps of the state capitol. Dorothy was there, standing beside the governor as he signed. So was Daniel, in his dress uniform. So was Captain Sharon Broussard. So was Renee Thompson, whose viral video had started the chain reaction. So was Michelle Torres, whose investigative series had exposed the depth of the problem. As the governor handed Dorothy a ceremonial pen, cameras flashed and the crowd applauded. Dorothy held that pen and thought about Robert. "We did it, baby," she whispered. "We changed something." Officer Brendan Cole's trial began in September. The prosecution's case was devastating. They had bodycam footage showing his pattern of targeting black motorists. They had financial records proving his kickback scheme with the towing company. They had testimony from other officers who'd witnessed his misconduct. They had victims, real people whose lives had been disrupted, whose dignity had been violated, whose trust in law enforcement had been shattered. Dorothy attended every day of the trial. She sat in the front row, silent and dignified, a living reminder of why this mattered. Cole's defense attorney tried to paint him as a dedicated officer who'd made mistakes but wasn't a criminal. The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for 3 hours and 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Dorothy closed her eyes and exhaled a breath she'd been holding for months. Cole was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. As he was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he passed directly in front of Dorothy. Their eyes met for just a moment. Cole looked away first. Dorothy didn't gloat. Didn't smile. She simply sat there, hands folded, dignified to the end. She felt no hatred for Brendan Cole. Only sadness. Sadness that a young man had been taught that power was something to wield rather than something to earn. Sadness that the system had failed him just as it had failed his victims. But also hope. Hope that maybe, finally, things were starting to change. On the 1-year anniversary of her traffic stop, Dorothy drove Robert's Buick to the exact spot on I-85 where it had happened. She pulled onto the shoulder, put the car in park, and sat there. The sun was setting, painting the Georgia sky in shades of gold and amber. Traffic hummed past, oblivious. Dorothy looked at the spot where she'd stood with her hands on the car, humiliated and angry but refusing to break. She thought about everything that had happened since. The viral video. The investigation. The testimony. The new law. The trial. It had been the hardest year of her life. But also the most meaningful. She pulled out her phone and called Daniel. "Hey, Mom. You okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just taking a moment." "Where are you?" "You know exactly where I am." Daniel chuckled softly. "Yeah. I figured. You want me to come?" "No, I'm good. I just wanted to hear your voice." "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know." She hung up and looked at the empty passenger seat. "Well, Robert," she said softly. "We did it. We changed something. It's not perfect, the world's still not perfect. But it's a little better than it was. And I think that's all we can ask." She could almost hear his voice, asterisk, "That's my girl. Always fighting. Always standing." Asterisk. Dorothy wiped her eyes, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway. She drove home slowly, gospel music playing softly, the setting sun in her rearview mirror. And for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. 5 years later, Dorothy Hayes stood at a podium in the Georgia Police Academy auditorium. She'd been invited to deliver the keynote address at the graduation ceremony. The room was filled with young cadets, diverse faces, eager expressions, ready to begin their careers in law enforcement. Dorothy looked out at them and smiled. "When I was your age," she began, "I put on a uniform for the first time and swore an oath to protect and serve. I meant every word of that oath. And for 34 years, I did my best to honor it." The room was silent. 3 years after I retired, I was pulled over on I-85 and treated like a criminal by a young officer who assumed the worst about me because of what I looked like. That experience could have broken me. It could have made me bitter. But instead, it reminded me why the oath matters. Why the badge matters. Why each of you, every single one of you, matters. She paused, letting her words sink in. You're about to enter a profession that is both noble and challenging. You will have power, real power over people's lives. The question is, what will you do with that power? Will you use it to protect? Or to intimidate? To serve? Or to control? Dorothy's voice grew stronger. I need you to understand something. The badge you're about to receive isn't just a piece of metal. It's a promise. A promise that you will see people, not profiles. That you will presume innocence, not guilt. That you will treat every citizen with dignity, regardless of their race, their age, their neighborhood, or their car. She looked around the room. 5 years ago, I stood on the side of a highway and demanded to be seen as human. That demand became a movement. That movement became a law. That law is changing how we do policing in this state. But laws only work if the people enforcing them believe in the principles behind them. Dorothy's voice softened. So I'm asking you, each of you, to be the kind of officer this profession needs. The kind who earns trust instead of demanding it. The kind who builds bridges instead of walls. The kind who remembers that every person you encounter is someone's mother, father, child, or friend. She stepped back from the podium. Honor your oath. Serve your community. And never, ever forget why you're here. The room rose in thunderous applause. That evening, Dorothy sat on her front porch with a cup of tea, Robert's Buick parked in the driveway. Daniel was inside, cooking dinner. Her grandchildren were coming over later. It was a good day. A peaceful day. Dorothy looked at the car and smiled. She'd thought about donating it after Robert died. But now she understood why she'd kept it. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. A symbol of resilience. Of refusal to be erased. Of every black woman who'd ever been stopped, searched, suspected, or silenced, and chose to stand tall anyway. Dorothy's phone buzzed. A text from Renee Thompson, *, just saw your speech at the Academy. You're still changing lives, Commissioner. *. Dorothy smiled and texted back, *, we all are. One day at a time. *. She set her phone down and looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold. I miss you, Robert, she whispered. But I know you're proud. And that's enough. Somewhere in the distance, a car drove past. Just a regular car, on a regular street, in a regular neighborhood. But because of Dorothy Hayes, because of one woman who refused to stay silent, that car, and the person driving it, had a little more protection than they'd had before. And that was legacy. Dorothy Hayes didn't just survive that traffic stop on I-85. She transformed it. What could have been a moment of humiliation became a catalyst for change. What could have been a defeat became a victory, not just for her, but for every black mother, every grandmother, every elder who'd ever been made to feel like a suspect in their own country. Officer Brendan Cole is still in prison, serving his 12-year sentence. The Police Accountability Act has been adopted by 17 other states. Captain Sharon Broussard was promoted to Chief of Police, the first black woman to hold that position in Atlanta's history. Daniel Hayes was named Georgia State Trooper of the Year. Renee Thompson went back to school and became a civil rights attorney, representing victims of police misconduct. Michelle Torres won the Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series. And Dorothy Hayes? She kept driving Robert's Buick until the day she passed away peacefully at 91 years old. The car was donated to the National Civil Rights Museum, where it sits today with a plaque that reads, "This vehicle represents more than transportation. It represents dignity, resistance, and the refusal to accept injustice." It was driven by Dorothy Hayes, a woman who spent her life building bridges and demanding accountability. May her legacy inspire future generations to stand tall, speak truth, and never accept being treated as less than human. Dorothy Hayes taught us something every black woman watching needs to remember. Your dignity doesn't stop at a red light. Your worth isn't determined by someone with a badge and a bad attitude. Your voice matters, even when they try to silence it. Your story matters, even when they try to bury it. And your fight, the fight for respect, for justice, for the simple right to drive home from church without being treated like a criminal, that fight is never wasted. Because even if the victory doesn't come today, even if the change takes years, even if you have to stand alone on the side of a highway and demand to be seen as human, that matters. You matter. And no one, absolutely no one, can take that away from you. Stand tall, sister. Your ancestors are watching. And they are proud.